we are still locked into this thing of like, women have to be in touch with their femininity, men have to be in touch with their masculinity. It's bullshit. We need to be in touch with us. And does that involve parts that are deeply instrumental and fierce? And does that involve parts that are exquisitely tender and submissive? Absolutely, yes, in every arena of our lives. So we need to allow ourselves that color. But is it hard? Is it scary? It absolutely is. It's terrifying because there are these electrified tripwires of gender taboo that scare almost all of us. Scare me. I'm 66 years old and I grew up in that environment. Our youngest child is transgender and dances back and forth between gender expression in a way that is just, it's not an issue. I wish that I could do that. I have too many fears.
Ken Page, it is an honor to have you on Men This Way, sir. Thank you for saying yes and for joining me today.
I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Bryan.
My wife turned me on to you, Sylvie Pukassian.
Who I love.
She's amazing, and she's a very discerning woman, Ken, my wife. She's incredibly discerning, more so than me. I'm a pretty discerning dude, but she's got eagle eyes, man. Nothing gets by her. And so when she points me in the direction of someone and says, you've got to pay attention to this person, they're doing something really interesting and meaningful, and I pay attention. And she pointed me in the direction of you. So here we are. Welcome.
Thank you. And I want to say that's pretty cool that you feel that way about your spouse. And, that's just a really nice thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. So as I was doing my research as well, Ken, I went to your YouTube channel. I saw that you used to do this thing called Wisdom Wednesdays.
Oh, yeah.
Which I love because this whole project that I'm doing, Men This Way, actually originated as Wisdom Wednesdays.
Come on.
Years ago, I did my own little Wisdom Wednesday thing.
Oh my God. That's so cool.
It was a live broadcast on Facebook. I mean, this is back in like 2017, 18, something like that.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, interesting. Great. Little shared heritage.
Brothers. Yes.
Yes, sir. So, Ken, normally where I like to start interviews, and I shared this with you in our preliminary conversations, I'll ask my guest, whether man or woman, something to the effect of, tell us about a significant event or experience in your early life that played a fundamental role in shaping you as a man or as a woman. And I like that question because it just helps us get to know you in a unique way. But where I want to start, though, rather than actually going into that question, because when I shared that with you, I like to share that with my guests to give them some time to think about it. That's the only question I tend to share before an interview to give them some time to think about it. I asked you because I'm aware that you are a gay man. If that's okay, I can use that language. Is that
totally cool? It's great.
Yeah. And so, and I asked, I want to also be mindful and thoughtful to check in, do you identify as a man? In my work and my coaching practices, all of that, for me, the definition of man is just, do you identify as a man? If the answer is yes, let's dance.
I love it.
Right. I don't need to know any more than that. But I'm really curious because you shared that you do identify as a man, but that you welcomed me asking you about that.
Yes.
And so this is where I'd like to start. Why were you interested, and why, I can't remember the exact language you used. I think you said you would love and appreciate it if I asked you about identifying as a man and whether you feel okay about that formulation of the question. So I want to just pause here. Why would you love and appreciate that? Or do you?
Well, yeah. So we're kind of at the cutting edge of a new world that is moving past the gender binary and thinking of gender identity not so much as a simple on-off switch, but more like if you picture a light switch, the difference between a lighting console that has about a million different options that can change and a light switch that is either just on or off. We are moving toward this beautiful console understanding of gender identity. We are moving to this kind of understanding of identity and gender identity as a much richer and more varied thing that when you look at someone, you cannot necessarily know how they identify, which is why now people are being asked, how do you identify? Because I am what's called cisgender. I identify as being a man. But you might look at me and I might say I'm transgender, or I might say I identify as a woman, or I identify as two-spirit, which is a richer understanding. And I have fascinating research. And I think it's like cutting edge stuff in the world that makes such a huge difference. But so I think it's great to ask somebody, like, what's your pronoun? What are the pronouns that you choose? What is your gender identity? Which for me is he, him, his, male. But my understanding of that and my feelings about that are like much richer than that. And I'm just going to tell you one story to give an example of that.
Great.
My best friend died of AIDS in 1991, and I couldn't grieve when he died. He was my best friend. To this day, I've never had a friend like him in my life. Brings tears to my eyes almost now, so many years later, but I was not able to cry. I was not able to grieve. So I went to a really good therapist and I said, help, because I feel like really screwed up. I can't even cry. My best friend is dying of AIDS. My best friend, my like identifying friend, like he's the identification in my life. And I believe there's probably going to be true until the day I die of like what friend is. I couldn't cry. And the therapist said to me, can you picture a part of yourself that feels the grief? And I went inside and I got this image of this kind of, it was like a fertility goddess. It was a really big hipped woman whose hips were swaying and there was this rhythmic moving. And it was her that I identified with at that moment. And then the dam broke and the tears poured out and I grieved and grieved and grieved. And it was she, that aspect of me, that helped me do that. So that's just like a story of like a richer understanding of gender identity.
Well, I'm getting chills for so many reasons right now because I was just sharing with some of the men in one of my men's groups that I'm running about dreams I have had of the goddess, of this divine mother goddess who has, I mean, literally in my nighttime dreams. I haven't seen her for a long time, but
It's
many years ago.
Though. It's great.
And particularly when I was mourning and grieving and going through painful relationship, longing for love, in that kind of, I don't know, youthful, idealistic way. I would have these dreams of this goddess who had sparkly eyes and this luminescent skin. And I remember once I was pushing her in a shopping cart in my dream, pushing the goddess, and she was just bathing, or maybe she was pushing me. Maybe I was in the shopping cart and she was pushing me. I don't remember, but there was a shopping cart involved. I remember the love, the feeling of love and acceptance and embrace and compassion and all the things that I had been seeking in human women, which they can't provide as a human for maybe more than a few seconds. We all have our moments of divine capacity to love, but then our humanness rushes back in. And I in the years since, what I understand is like, that's a part of me. That goddess lives in me.
Yes.
Right? I mean, it was in my head, my dreams. I conjured her wherever she came from in the inspiration of the outside, but she lives in me. And I'm hearing echoes of that in what you're sharing right now.
Yes. I want us all to think bigger. I want us all to think bigger about this. And I'll tell you another story. I'll tell you a story of a woman and a man that I worked with because I was a psychotherapist for many years. I've just closed my practice. But this was actually a friend of mine, and she won a really, really big award, like one of the biggest awards in her field that you could win. I mean, it was huge, huge. And I remember her going on a date with a guy and saying to me, I have to be in my feminine, so I can't get too fierce about about this, too bursting with pride, to like pound the table and have a beer and want to just celebrate. I can't do that because that's, you can't find an alpha guy if you do that. You can't do that. That's the man's role. And I was like, this is fucking heartbreaking. And I have been heartbroken so many times by this, and so many men. I remember this amazing guy coming to me and saying, I'm not going to be able to find a woman really of my dreams because I'm not an alpha guy. And we are so trapped by these concepts, and even so much in the New Age community, these concepts. And so what I would really encourage all of us to do is untether our authenticity from any expectation about gender identity and who we're supposed to be, so that can flow and that could change in sex, in talking, in communication, in our own inner experience of ourselves. And the research backs that up in fascinating ways. And just to share some things about that, I was speaking with a really brilliant researcher, and she was just sharing a lot of research with me. And she said, what we try to do now is not say masculine and feminine, because that ties it directly to genitalia. Instead, to say expressive and instrumental, which does not tie it to genitalia at all. And you get to be the full range of that. And the research also shows that couples where there's fluidity in terms of typical male and female roles, where folks can go in and out in communication, in sex, in feeling, in expression, are in fact the happiest and most successful couples, much more so than people who are like locked into roles. And I think that even in this kind of current environment and in a more new age environment, we are still locked into this thing of like, women have to be in touch with their femininity, men have to be in touch with their masculinity. It's bullshit. We need to be in touch with us. And does that involve parts that are deeply instrumental and fierce? And does that involve parts that are exquisitely tender and submissive? Absolutely, yes, in every arena of our lives. So we need to allow ourselves that color. But is it hard? Is it scary? It absolutely is. It's terrifying because there are these electrified tripwires of gender taboo that scare almost all of us. Scare me. I'm 66 years old and I grew up in that environment. Our youngest child is transgender and dances back and forth between gender expression in a way that is just, it's not an issue. I wish that I could do that. I have too many fears, but I'm pushing in that direction. I'm trying to teach people in that direction. So that's my broad kind of thing that I want to say about that. But I guess I'll say one more thing. Do you know Malidoma Somé? Do you know his work?
I do. I know he recently died. Did you know that?
No,
Yeah, he recently died. Only maybe within the last year, anyway. Yes, wow. I'm not deeply familiar with him, but the teachers I study quoted him often.
Yes, just an amazing teacher with the most incredible story, personal story. He was abducted. He was the next in line to become the kind of shaman in his tribe in Africa, in Burkina Faso. And he was abducted by Christian missionaries, ended up being sent to Christian school, broke out at 13, hiked across, 100 miles of desert or something like that, went back to his tribe and said, I'm here to continue. And they said, you can't now because you are a bridge builder. You need to go to the Western world and live in both because you are both now. Anyway, he, in his workshops, would do this huge ritual of moving from earth to heaven. It was the culmination of his workshops, and it had to be queer men at the gate between heaven and earth. That was what he learned in his lineage because, and this is actually something that's really true in a huge number of indigenous cultures, it was virtually almost always the queer people who were the shamans.
Mm,
And the reason why was because a definition of the sacred is 1 foot in each world and being
mm,
able to handle it. And
mm.
they thought that queer people were kind of able to do that more. So, I think we've broadened past that. I think it gets to be all of us, but I share that as one of a million amazing stories of people who hopped those tripwires and
Mm.
created magic in the world.
Wow. Ken, look, man, this is so good. And I'm already getting a sense that we're not going to get to some of the other things that you wanted to talk about in this. We may have to come back and do another one to talk
I'd love to.
about I know you specialize, I think, in dating and helping people date. Your book is called Date Deeper. Dating
Deeper
Deeper.
Dating, how to
Deeper
drop the
Dating.
games of seduction and discover the power of intimacy. And it's about the search for love as one of the most profound spiritual journeys of our adult lives. So trust me, I'm going to be weaving that in. But
Well,
yes, wherever you want to go.
Well, I'd like to stay here for a little while in this gender
Sure.
identity question because, man, this is such a rich exploration. And I love that you just mentioned Malidoma Somé because one of the teachers that I studied, Bill Plotkin. Are you familiar with Bill Plotkin's work?
I'm not, no.
So Bill Plotkin wrote a book. He's written many books, but and he talks about Malidoma Somé in his book. But I'll even put it on the screen here: Nature and the Human Soul. I think you would love this book, Ken. Nature and the Human Soul.
I love the title right off the bat.
The subtitle is Cultivating Wholeness and Community in a Fragmented World.
Oh, beautiful.
He wrote another book called Soulcraft. Bill Plotkin, and the reason I think this is meaningful and relevant, Bill Plotkin, this book, Nature and the Human Soul, it's kind of become my Bible of sorts. He maps out the developmental stages of a human, what a human can go through from infanthood to elderhood. And he did this in kind of there's sort of two maps that he talks about. One is the ego-centric society's map, which is all about comfort and care of the ego, entitlement, comfort, right? The whole from infancy to elderhood, it's all about my comfort and my own care, right? The ego-centric.
Yes.
But the other map, the one that he suggests is a community that is alive and dynamic and embracing of all of its parts, is what he would call an eco-centric.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Community, eco-centric map. And he plots the developmental stages of that. And here's why this is relevant to me in this the gender identity conversation. So, because I see this through a frame, and I want to, Ken, I want some perspective from you. I would like to present this, if that's okay, and get how I see the gender identity thing happening, why I see so much pushback from a lot of people. I know that there are going to be listeners to this conversation, and I think this is a pretty, open-minded. I mean, I'm a very open-minded person. I surround myself with open-minded people as best I can. And even amongst the so-called open-minded, there's resistance, there's pushback, there's
fear.
There's fear, surely, and confusion, and even in some of the things that you just shared, I could hear some of our listeners, men and women, both thinking, "Wait, this guy's asking me to give up my identity as a man, and maybe I could be and pretend that maybe I could be a woman or this." Anyway, so Ken, if you just bear with me for a moment, I want to present the frame through which I see this.
Yes.
So one of Bill's how do I say, one of his presumptions about the world is that we are stuck in adolescence. Collectively, by and large, we are an adolescent culture. That makes sense. Right? And then it does make sense. It's not hard to buy that.
Right.
Yes. Tragically, it's so obvious when it's spoken.
Yes.
And what he's mapped out are, let's say, so the stages of adolescence. I think I'm going to try to weave in this here, the nature and the human soul, with how I see what's happening in the gender identity conversation. One of the main tasks of adolescence, per Bill's work, is to discover, to fashion, create a social presence that is both authentic. You've used the word authentic, I think in this conversation already, I can remember if before we recorded or since we've been recording, but an authentic social presence, but that is, he calls that the nature task. Like, who am I really in the world? Who am I really? But then there's another task, a culture task that is also, who am I in relationship to my peers, right? That's a different question. Who am I authentically versus who am I in relationship to the other beings walking around? You know, am I a boy? Am I a girl? Am I going to be a doctor? Am I going to be am I an artist? Am I whatever? Those kinds of questions versus who am I really beyond all that, right? Here's what I think. I believe that much of our world, we're stepping into a full adolescent rite of passage of sorts, like even initiation. I mean, climate change, the AI, the crises that we're facing as sort of kind of a potential annihilation, right? The ways we have been cannot be anymore. We have to change or we are going to perish, right? Which is, Malidoma Somé talked about boyhood to manhood, rites of passage. Some boys didn't survive that, but better, the culture and community was better for having losing some boys to the initiation rite of passage than not initiating any boys and having grown men who were never initiated. I know I'm dancing around a bit here, but see, here's what I wonder, and I apologize. I usually don't talk this much, but
it's okay. I'm tracking you.
Okay, good.
You.
Thank you. But I think
this is
complex
stuff.
It is complex. I'm aware that when I was in my early 20s, I was in the military and I spent 4 months consciously wondering if I could be gay. Not because I was particularly drawn to men, but because there was a part of me that realized, well, I can find men attractive. I see, I know what a good looking man is. Does that mean I'm gay? And I just sat in that question for 4 months. I didn't talk to anybody about it. First off, I was in the military. It was illegal. It was illegal to be gay at that time. I could go to jail if I was gay, military jail, whatever. Bad things could happen. And so I didn't talk to anybody about it, but I would imagine I would even in my head, I'd be talking to a guy and I'd be like, what if I just can I make out with him? Like, what would that be like? I did these thought experiments.
Sure. Yeah.
And 4 months, I just went there for about 4 months and I came to the realization, you know what? I'm not. I'm really drawn to women. I can see that men are attractive, but I don't want to touch a man. I don't want to be physically intimate with a man. Like, I'm clear. And that helped me from then on. I never experienced homophobia. I just never had an issue being around gay men from then on. And so, but this is kind of where I'm coming from, Ken. I wonder if there is a collective identity seeking that is happening, like where it's finally okay to talk about these things in a way. I mean, a lot of people are still saying, no, it's not okay. You're a man or you're a woman or get out, go make your own weird country. But here we're men or we're women, right? So there's still that old antiquated pushback on, we're not going to do what Bill Plotkin would say is the essential adolescent task of figuring out who are we authentically. And yet there's a clamoring in society also for let's fucking figure out who we are authentically. Let me pause there, just see what's coming up for you with all this.
Well, I love that. And, that is why, just to clarify, there is, of course, sexual orientation, which is one axis of identity, like who are you attracted to? People of the same sex, people of opposite sex, both, people who are trans, who are you attracted to? What's your orientation? And then the other one is gender identity, which is a different axis altogether. So you could identify as queer, which I think is this amazing word, because I don't like that word. It's got for me personally, it's got a lot of trauma attached to it. So I've never fully embraced it, except conceptually, it's fabulous because it allows for all of the spectrum. It doesn't limit that spectrum at all. So I think that the more we do thought experiments where we can think, oh, I'm heterosexual. I like to dress like Harry Styles in concert. Like I would like to wear what I want to wear. I would like to, do whatever. I am interested in the color pink. I am interested in wearing a skirt. I want to play with that shit. So,
I want to go to Burning Man.
Freedom. I want to go to Burning Man. I want to
wear a tutu,
wear a kilt. I want to wear a tutu, whatever, whatever. Like that kind of freedom, which is so denied, so denied. And as a somewhat repressed 66-year-old, even though I'm a gay man who is an activist and speaks about this stuff, I get that repression. I get that repression. I see our youngest, who is this stunningly beautiful girl who also can present as a boy. And I just think, wow, is she free? Oh my God.
How old is she?
She's 22. So the thought experiment that you're talking about, I think, is great for all of us. Another arena is sex, right? That's like also an axis that is not related to gender identity, and it's not related to sexual orientation. So you could be like a cisgender, male identifying male, and really, 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 you love being a sub with your wife. And so that's an entirely different axis that, falls under the arena. To me, there are like three questions for profound sexual evolution. And those are, how do I feel safe? In what kind of sex do I feel safe? Another is, with what kind of sex do I feel emotionally and spiritually moved? And the third one is, with what kind of sex do I feel really turned on? And those are all identity questions for us and also for our relationships with others. So in all of these arenas, this concept of thought experiment and this allowing ourselves is just a really great thing. And I'll just share one example. I'm a serious meditator. I've been meditating really seriously for actually like about over 40 years. And my meditation is incredibly important to me. And one of the meditations I do involves an in-breath and an out-breath, conscious in-breath and out-breath. And so often when I have done that in-breath, I feel like essence of the divine expressive, the divine. I feel this kind of very feminine energy. And when I exhale, I feel this deeply masculine energy. And I just adore both of them. They're both portals to something huge and beautiful and awesome and fantastic and delicious. So yeah. But I think so I agree with you, but my big thought around that is that the minute we lock in to something where identity formation trumps authenticity, we're fucked. What we want to do is 100%. Always have the authenticity, trump that. And that is in sex and identity and all of that. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, Ken, I would love at someday if you visit Nature and the Human Soul, because
I think I'd like to. Yeah,
I think you'll be blown away by it. I think you'll be deeply served by it. He even tracks how our what does he call it? Our center of gravity shifts from infancy to elderhood. For example, our center of gravity when we're toddlers, when we're in what he calls like late childhood, is the family. It's the family and the natural world around me. That's it. That's my center of gravity. But when I become an adolescent, when I step into adolescence, my center of gravity shifts away from the family and towards my peer group.
Yes.
And society. Again, who am I? Right. And on. The center of gravity in elderhood, we start getting into elderhood, and the center of gravity shifts more towards the ineffable, the cosmos. We're starting to leave the center of gravity of sort of ethnocentrism or even human centrism, and we're starting to visit other realms. Anyway, I think you'll be deeply served by it. I love his work, and it's helped me understand. I don't know if it's the right frame or not, if it serves. I share this with Sylvie sometimes, and she can get a little mad at me because I think she thinks I'm being dismissive of the pronoun conversation, of the gender identity conversation. And I don't think I'm being dismissive at all. I think in my brain, I'm embracing that we have to go through this. All humans have to spend the 4 months or the 4 years or the 40 years or a lifetime, whatever.
It's got to be a lifetime. It has to be a lifetime, because if it's not a lifetime, we are stilted. So yeah, it's got to be an always thing. You're in the middle of sex with your partner and you're thinking, what's really authentic? And so here's my question for every one of us. What are you scared in this gender expression spectrum? What are you scared to express? What is that line where it feels too quote unquote feminine for you? What is that line where it feels too quote unquote masculine for you? What is across that line? That's your shadow point. What is across that line? What is on the other side of that line is your greatness. It's the missing piece. It is nuclear. It's the hidden part that is going to make you great. So there's a scary journey and there's an honesty journey, which is what the fuck scares me. And we have to admit what scares us. And just moving ahead with that a little bit further, we have to do that in our intimate relationships. Like, what are the things that, and this is true for dating and it's true in intimate relationships, like, what am I timid to ask for? I have this concept of core gifts, which is this central concept in all the work that I do. And one of the ways that we can discover our core gifts is by asking ourselves this fabulous question, which connects to all the beautiful fears and possibilities that we're talking about. And here's what it is. What are the aspects of my being that I feel most timid to reveal and share and express to my partner? What are the asks that make me feel mortified or embarrassed or scared to ask for? And if your answer is no, there are none, then you're numb. Then you're numb, because that is an absolute impossibility. And when you can embrace that, you embrace your other self. And so this is actually true in the gender identity arena too. So when you hit that line where, let's say you're identified, whatever gender you're identified with.
I'm a man. I'm a man. I feel, let's start there, because I feel very comfortable and proud, not in some weird way, not in some pedestaled way,
just beautiful way,
in a beautiful way. Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. So what is the place where you start hitting the tripwire of, if I show that, it's going to be too feminine? It's going to be, you don't have to answer this, but
I'll answer it. I'd be happy to answer it. I think this is a great exercise.
Great. What is and I'll answer it too. Okay. What is that place where it's scary to show my partner this part of me because it's too vulnerable? It's too feminine. Whatever is in that quote unquote arena of feminine, like I'm gonna lose some gold if I do that. Something, every one of us needs to know the answer to that. So I'll ask you and I'll answer it too.
Well, I know immediately what comes up for me is crying. My wife has told me she loves it when I cry. She wants me to cry. She'll put her finger to the corner of my eye sometimes if we're watching a movie just to see if there's a teardrop there. Very playfully. Yes. But I can feel the part of me. It's not a conscious, this is too feminine. I don't use that language in my head, but I definitely
no. This usually isn't conscious, right?
Yeah. It's definitely I'm not allowed. I can't do that.
That's it.
That's really how it just sounds. Don't do that. You can't.
So when you do that, your whole life will blow up in the most amazing ways. You will step into your greatness in the most fucking unbelievable ways.
Yeah.
Because that's your shadow self. So, for me, I say this to my husband, he can rest his head on my chest for hours and I hold him. My dad's a Holocaust survivor, and that went back to your original question about masculine and identify seminal moments to think about what does it mean to be a man. So I could come back and say something about that. But he was like a really tough motorcycle riding, fierce, no fucking fear. He would literally go. In Germany after the war, he would go to the dog pound kind of place, the animal shelter, and he would say, which is the most dangerous dog, the one that you're going to put to sleep? And because of its, dangerousness, leave me alone with him in a leash. And he would walk out with that dog. Wow. He's a real tough guy. Uh-huh. He's a real tough guy. Yeah. And I wasn't. So, there's deep implanted shame as a gay man, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, I can barely rest my head and lay my head on my husband's chest. I feel like if I do, he won't love me because I'm too weak. Meanwhile, he's like the football playing jock.
Mm.
So it's like a funny kind of thing, but he could do it
Yeah.
with me. I can't do it with him yet. And I
Wow.
tell him that. So that's just a story of like a certain level of
Yeah.
tenderness that there's still shame. But so we should both make a commitment to each other right now that
Mm.
we're going to like do this.
Mm.
Like we're really going to open to doing this. And then maybe in our next episode, we could share what that's like.
Yeah. Well, I think about that, and it takes me to the edge of my practice.
Right.
The
I
edge of
gotcha, baby. I gotcha.
the edge of practice. I look at those moments, and they happen pretty regularly. We we live in the Netflix era, don't we? I never watched so much TV in my life until this is the streaming era.
And do you know that research shows that it actually brings a couple closer together to like have some shows that you watch together?
I did not know that. That's good
Yeah,
to know.
yeah,
That's good to
yeah,
know. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. You probably first have to be probably first disconnects you as you're searching for the show, and both of you are arguing for shows that the other doesn't want to watch.
Right,
So
right.
there's some turmoil we certainly go through, right? But when we find the show, oh, it's gold.
Yes,
It's gold.
Yes.
Well, that makes sense why it feels like such a betrayal when they watch an episode without me.
Oh yes, that's cheating. That's cheating. Yes.
That's
cheating.
Yes.
Oh yes.
But it happens regularly.
A new definition for serial monogamy.
I see what you're doing there, Ken. Let me ask you. Well, could you coach me on how you would coach me or help me step into a practice that when I hit that moment, okay, here it is. Emotions, there's something happening even just on the screen. My wife is right here. She's giving me the side eye to see if I'm crying, and I can see the part of me that's like, nope, can't show her. What's a practice that I could to help me relax into that and lean into that and allow that?
Well, this is my favorite practice apart from my regular meditation. It's one that I do pretty much every day. And later on, I will give people, I'll tell you where to go to get access to an audio recording of that practice. But it's the inner mentor practice. So can I guide you in it really briefly?
Sure, please. Yeah.
Okay, good. So just close your eyes for a moment. And we're going to hold this concept that you is like a door opening to so much deeper love, to more of your greatness, to more of your amazingness, to more of your capacity. And I'd like you to imagine a Bryan, like it's like your older brother. It's like an evolved you. It's like an enlightened you who's free to cry. Like he has crossed over that river and he could just do it. He could do it. Just, you don't have to earn it. You don't have to be there. Just imagine that you, and imagine what it would feel like in your heart and your body. And remember maybe times when you did, like, even if you didn't out loud cry, but that streaming happened inside of you and you let it happen. And just picture your flowingness as you cross those foreign borders and you allow yourself to inhabit your heart, all these chambers of your heart, and how cool it would be with your wife. And you just imagine all of that amazing stuff, like getting through this adventure, and picture how you'd feel in your heart, how you'd feel in your body when you can stream in this way. Okay, just imagine what his eyes look like, what his face reflect. And now, just like method acting, without thinking, step into him, because it's a stretch, but it's you. It's just you. So step into him. Just imagine you're stepping into him, into his beautiful flowing heart, and look at the you of today right now. And from this place, and you could do it internally, or you could do it out loud if you want, but it's fine to do it internally. Think of the guidance you would call out to the Bryan of today to help him cross this river, to help him get there. What would you want to say to him? Just think of that. Good. And now just imagine coming back into you, but you're looking at this inner mentor who is like your friend, your older brother. And just imagine the two of you embracing, and you get to be both. You're your inner mentor and you're the you of today. And you guys get to be friends. And the more friendship you have with him, the more you will naturally be able to do this. That's the process. So slowly come back and open your eyes.
Yeah, can I share just some reflections?
Oh, please
what came
do.
up for me?
Yeah.
So I love there's parts work in there. the internal family systems. There's a part of me that I know knows how to do this, knows how to cry, knows
Yeah.
how to relax, how to just be the moment, we could say. What came up for me also is Francis Weller. Are you familiar with his work? Francis Weller wrote a book called The Wild Edge of Sorrow. Another book I strongly recommend, The Wild Edge of Sorrow. He's the one that actually introduced me to Malidoma Some. But he talks about grief and grieving. And there are two things required to move grief. One is it needs containment and release. If I'm the container for my own grief, I can't release it, because there's a falling apart that has to happen in grief. There's a letting go and if nobody is containing me, and no one ever contained me, no one ever gave me safe containment in my whole damn life. I've never had safe containment to grieve, right? Wow. Quite the opposite. It's dangerous to cry, dangerous to feel. I mean, I was in the fucking military, but not just that. I was a boy in this culture. I was a person because women got the same. Everyone gets the same. However you identify, it's not
women
safe.
Get it differently. Yeah,
they get it differently, but it's not safe. And so I've been the container. I've had to hold my own grief, and I think a lot of our listeners can surely relate to this. Like, again, I'm the container. I can't release it. And so what just came up for me in that meditation is there's someone in me who's older, wiser, more mature, more, I guess just, I don't know. There's someone who can be the container for me, for the other part of me that needs to grieve, to grieve.
Wow.
Right. That's all within me. And so, I'm also, my wife, she wants to be a container to help so that I can grieve. But again, my nervous system doesn't fully trust. It's so strange. But anyway, thank you so much, Ken, for that practice, that awareness, you called it the inner mentor?
Inner mentor. Yeah. Later on, I'll give everybody a link so that they can get that meditation. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah. I know I'm just mindful of time. I would like to kind of follow, maybe I think coming back and let's do something in the fall to explore some of the other topics that we won't get to today.
Let's do it, but let's make a commitment to each other right now that between then and now, we're going to come back with some progress. We're going to talk to our partners and say, this is what scares me. Mm-hmm. Let's play with some ideas for how you could help me get there. What do you think? Deal?
I like it. Deal. I'm in.
Me too. I like it too. Scary, but I like it.
So in our preliminary conversations, you sent me a message that leapt out at me, and I just want to read it here and then hand it off to you to kind of take us through. I think we'll ultimately conclude here, even though this is still a big, massive subject, but you said, I'd like to talk about how traditional concepts of who men and women are and who they should be get us into huge trouble and hold us back from real intimacy, and some powerful research that backs that up. And how many of these insights, frequently from the LGBTQ community, hold keys for men and everyone to experience more freedom in sex, love, and intimacy, as well as self-love. So I know we're already dancing in that field, but take us more into what you were pointing at in that paragraph.
Okay, so I want to give an image that is, to me, an incredibly simple map of the entire intimacy journey, including intimacy with self and intimacy with soul. Okay, really simple. So picture a target, and it's in my book. So if you want a graphic, if that fits, for your what Deeper you do, dating. I could give that to you. Yeah. But I mean, I could give you a graphic. But anyway, it's really easy to picture. It is a target with 3 circles. So if you picture that inner circle is what I call your gift zone. That's where your heart is open. You may be feeling grief, you may be feeling joy, but you're holding it with some compassion and some space and some care. That's the Holy Land. When we can feel whatever we're feeling and we can hold it with humanity and compassion, we're there. We are lit from within. We are amazing. But the thing about that gift zone is that our greatest wounds are there too. Our deepest insecurities are there. That's the land of really heartfelt authenticity. And also, all of the gender identity taboos are there too. Like, I can't be this, I can't be that. I was this, I was hurt, I was that. It's scary. It's really scary to live in your gift zone. So the next level out is the zone of protection. And that's where we get numb, where we watch too much TV and eat too many Cheetos and, whatever it is that we do. And it's kind of like as you get further out in the target, you move more deeply into that zone of protection. You move further away from the beating heart of your humanity, which is at that center circle. The more you go into that center circle, the more you are in the fire and the heart of that self. And I believe at the center of the center of the center of that circle is the soul. So then you're going out, there's this gift circle, then the gift zone, the next ring out is the zone of protection, where you're kind of numb and distant and somewhat shut down, but you're not like dead inside. And then the next zone is the zone of disconnection. And that's where dangerous emptiness starts to come in. You go out, the further you go out, it's always for protection. It is always for protection because the deepest wounds lie within and in the center. The further out you go, the more painful it gets. And our task, and this is a gorgeous, gorgeous process. Picture that target. Imagine you had a push pin. Where would you put it right now about where you are? What could you do to move that push pin closer to the very center of that gift zone? So in your day-to-day life, in our day-to-day life, the question is, how close are we living to the center? And it's not easy. We need to learn to bear both deep joy and deep sorrow in homeopathic doses because it's fierce. It burns us up. It's really intense. So the question is, and this relates to gender identity too, how much you are you being? How much are you breaking those standards of, oh, I can't do this because it's not male enough, it's not female enough? How much are you just being in this flow of your gorgeous, amazing being? And that's the question. And when we do that, we hit up against all this stuff of like, oh, my gender identity won't allow me to do this, or maybe other things won't. And the brave step of saying, fuck that. I'm going to be me. I'm going to taste this. I'm going to live in it. I'm going to be brave enough to experience it. When we do that in sex, when we do it in relationships, when we do it without drugs and without alcohol, I'm not talking about like the conscious use of psychedelics or anything like that. But when we do it consciously, when we really go there as ourselves, this is the deep, deep meaning of liberation. And it's the deep meaning of intimacy. So using that image, wherever gender identity stuff stops you from going closer to the center, you are at a gold mine, because on the other side of that tripwire is a much more amazing you.
Yeah. Yeah. What occurs to me, Ken, as you share that map is, the work that I do, and likely the work that you do, is so much of the world is living in those outer rings, right, of protection and disconnection.
Yeah.
That in the simplest telling of it, I believe that even like conversations like this, like I as you were talking, I was even like imagining the introduction to our conversation in my head a little bit, and like, wow, I almost, I think we're having what I like to call a wisdom conversation. What the hell does that mean? Well, I'm not really sure, but what it has a sense of, it's like participating in it, listening to it.
Yes.
That alone has the act of moving us towards closer out of our disconnection and our protection, closer to something really raw and real and vulnerable and deeply, deeply true. And
well, that's the gift of what you do. I really, yes, totally.
Thank you. So that map, so people can learn more about what you just described in your book, Deeper Dating.
Right. They can learn about it in a lot of different ways. I have a podcast, the Deeper Dating podcast. It's for everybody, in relationship, out of relationship. If you Should I tell how people can find out
Let's,
more
yeah,
about that now?
please do. I know we want to finish here in just a moment or two. So yeah, please share with people what you want them to know about what you're up to, where they can find you.
Sure, sure, sure. Well, I will say that, I've closed my practice, but I offer intensives for small groups of 12 people over 6 months working really closely with me. And you can learn about that when you go to deeperdatingpodcast.com and then go to work with Ken. But if you want to get if you want to be on my mailing list and if you want to get a copy of an ebook describing these keys to deeper intimacy for everyone, and also an audio meditation of this beautiful inner mentor practice and a personal journal, just go to deeperdatinggifts.com, and then you'll be on my mailing list. You'll get to hear about everything. Or you can go to deeperdatingpodcast.com, or you can get my book, which is called Deeper Dating. And if you do that, you can learn more about the intensives, other things that I offer, other things that I believe in. And of course, on all social media, Deeper Dating or Ken Page, but usually Deeper Dating.
I love that you're doing groups, and for 6 months, I too focus now on longer term group work together. There's such power and possibility in that.
Amazing. And these groups actually, virtually every single one continues on as a self-run group after 6 months because they bond so deeply. Yeah.
Well, and all of those links as well will be in the show notes for this episode. So, Ken, we have so much more to talk about. I'm excited to do this again in the fall.
Sounds great. Great with our shared goals.
With our reporting backs of what has transpired. I'm going to share with Sylvie today, what we talked about.
Great.
And so I'm just thank you even for prompting that conversation. She'll delight in it. She's gonna scream with delight when I tell her how our conversation went. That's the gift of her is emotion and joy, and she feels it all. I mean, I've never seen anyone cry so hard as I see my wife cry, and she celebrates the same, man. That's what drew me to her, and I know that a part of that is she represents a part of me that I am still seeking to reclaim, which is my own emotionality and capacity for full expression. So
yes. When I tell Greg about this, which I'll also do today, he'll laugh. He will not underneath. He'll be like, I don't really get why this scares you, but sure. Yeah.
Well, again, Ken, it's truly an honor. Thank you so much for joining me.
Vice
and I look forward to doing this again in the future.
Thank you so much, Bryan. Me too. This was really, really wonderful. I really appreciate it.